So the Netherlands is obviously a very nice country. Everything's very sort of neat, orderly, law-abiding. Look at it. It looks lovely. It looks like a postcard, doesn't it? And this is sort of...
I don't like bikes, though.
That is the one drawback for an Englishman. Having to dodge all the cyclists is a bit frustrating. But it does mean that you don't get run over by cars. So the limitation of getting hurt is pretty good. But I've been there. I really liked it. It's the sort of the closest I've felt to being at home away from home. And of course, normally it stays like this. But then this happened. What happened is this is an anti-immigration protest, and those are the police. And what is happening is they are running away.
Is it? Could it be that the Dutch have had enough?
Thank you.
Is it that
slop account over there?
Is it that Dutch patriots educate police vehicle because education is important?
All the buzzwords in, didn't you? No, we're gonna be talking about what it is in a second, but I'm just going to show you some footage and then we'll explain what's going on. So here's some more. Sorry if it's a little bit loud, but riots often are. Oh, it's all been muted, at least on our end.
They seem angry a bit, don't they?
Just a touch, yeah. But as you can see, they're attacking the police vans and they're having to flee. And here they're chanting, "We are the Netherlands." I'm not sure if you can hear it, but we cannot. Is it muted, Samson, or is that just on our end?
I can't hear it either.
Samson has unmuted this end. And I think there's one more here where... we can hear it. And this is them, I think, turning over a set on fire police car. So this is hardly the sort of peaceful, idyllic, law-abiding stuff that we're used to seeing. And of course, the Dutch are sort of similar to the British in the fact that they've got their football hooligans and there may be some overlap here. But it is a little bit surprising that this has happened because to an outside observer, it seems to have come from nowhere.
You'd expect this from France. You wouldn't expect it from the Dutch.
No, you wouldn't. It's sort of similar to Germany in a way that people, generally speaking, abide by the law and are quite neat and tidy and orderly. And that's a good thing, right? It's an admirable way to conduct yourself. But this was an anti-immigration protest outside Den Haag, or The Hague. And this is the seat of the Dutch Parliament, if you're not aware. And 30 people were arrested and 2 officers were injured. And I'm going to pronounce his name in the original Dutch first, before saying it in English so everyone else understands. But Geert Wilders, I think. I didn't do the
You
properly.
also did it with a hand.
It's a bit flamboyant, isn't it?
Is it like dice?
I think I should be speaking Italian with that amount of hand motion. But he was invited and he declined to speak there. I don't know whether he thought it might end up this way, but it was a rainy day in a field, so maybe it was just that he didn't fancy it. But another thing that happened, which I've not been able to find video footage of, but it is claimed to have happened, is 1,500 people blocked a highway crossing the city. And this has been met with lots of condemnation because, of course, fighting the police isn't exactly a productive way to limit immigration, is it? Generally speaking, this sort of thing doesn't play well optically, and although I can certainly understand the anger and frustration because I care a lot about immigration as well, and I imagine that they're probably going to have lots of similar arguments that I might have about high rates of crime and financial burdens, etc. But it doesn't necessarily help things by doing this, and I think Wilders has gone down a similar line here. And to translate the Dutch here, he says, "Tackle that scum with an iron fist. Blocking the highway and violence against the police are totally, but really totally unacceptable idiots." So, pretty strong words, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And if a lot of those people are rioting over anti-immigration, then obviously it's put Wilders in a position where he's having to crack down on his own supporters. Right?
Yeah, because what is going to be done, and has been done, I'll show you in a second, is that they're going to say, listen, you're the person that's creating the environment where this happens. And so he's got to toe this narrow line because he's at the minute doing quite well politically, and he doesn't want to upset that by being seen as a rabble-rouser and things like that.
Yeah.
So it has a chance of actually impeding proper improvements to the country, potentially. So I think that that's part of the reason why he's so frustrated, as well as the fact that obviously it's a breakdown of law and order that's not exactly ideal. And then again, this is quoting an article calling it football hooligans. I don't know whether they were football hooligans. I could sort of see where they might be coming from, but it's a little bit difficult to guess on those sorts of things. I mean, also, just because you like football and do some hooliganism doesn't mean you're necessarily a football hooligan. But it's by the by, right? It's not that.
These technicalities are lost on me, as neither a fan of football or hooliganism.
Which one do you prefer more, Luca?
I can't say live on YouTube.
Fair enough. But it's calling them football hooligans, and Wilders is calling them, he's saying, pick them up, lock away, and throw away the key, scum. So it can't really get any stronger than that.
You know what happens in this case is that Wilders is thinking of his political constituency and of the fact that, as you said, he's doing well. And the whole battle, the whole effort is to try and convince the majority, the silent majority, that one side is the side of law and order and the other side is basically completely against civilization as we know it and as the Dutch want it. So this is counterproductive. It doesn't help.
Yes.
No, and it's made even harder by the nature of the proportional representation system, where all the other parties will be allied against him.
Yeah. On the other hand, there's also the possibility, I don't know to what extent this happened, because I've only saw the videos from, slop accounts, as you said in the beginning when we were, joking about, how these accounts are describing things. But there's always the possibility of agent provocateurs.
I've seen people talking about this, and this is actually something that you've got it exactly right where I wanted to mention it, so well done, Stelios, is that I saw lots of people who either claimed to be there or know some of the people involved saying that there were either like left-wing adjutants or anti-far people. And I don't know how true that is, but I would be remiss not to mention it, that it's being circulated. But it's one of those things that's so difficult to prove that we can't know one way or the other. I suppose if there's video footage of someone who seems like they're not part of the protest, they just sort of walk out of nowhere and then start causing trouble, then there might be a bit of a stronger case. But of course, with these sorts of things, it's always very difficult to piece together what has actually happened, because of course there's no real video of what started this off, because it did start off as a peaceful protest and turned into a riot. Not sure how it got to that point, whether it was police provocation or the protesters at the time. It's difficult to tell. But anyway, let's go on to what the leader of the Green Labour Party Alliance says. So he's talking about there being NSB flags in that field there, which of course National Socialist. So he's trying to suggest a link between being anti-immigration and the mid-century Germans.
Yeah, and he's talking about extreme right there. We haven't translated it yet.
It's all right. I've
but
got
I
the translation.
guess extreme rechts is. Yep.
So violence against the police by the far right, unacceptable. These are Trumpian conditions fueled by politicians who sow fear and division. And this is this argument, which is a load of nonsense, that by talking about immigration and talking about resolving it politically and civilly and through the democratic process, that ultimately results in violence, because that's not true. And in fact, it's the opposite. If you don't do anything about it, you make violence more likely because people feel like the political system isn't solving it. And I think actually these sorts of people are ramping up the temperature of their respective countries, because this isn't just restricted to the Netherlands. It's in the US, it's in the UK, it's all over Europe. People trying to suggest that legitimate criticisms about immigration are wrong, and they're not. And in fact, they're very morally right. If you like preventing crime, for example, if you like not having your wealth extracted out of your country, these are good and moral things.
And not having your culture liquidated.
Exactly.
Yes. These This sort of rhetoric, though, I mean, this has been going on for as long as the problems have been going on.
Exactly.
When you actually look back, even into the 1960s and the 1970s, you can only just look with frustration at how little the dialogue has actually shifted. Certainly from the left, who have never adapted once to the changing times, to the changing conditions. You just quickly to say, you have exactly this point that Jonathan Miller made to Enoch Powell on a television debate, where he was saying, look, Powell, it's really simple. If you just didn't voice these concerns, then people wouldn't be concerned about it, which is exactly the thing that Timmermans is saying here. It's total nonsense.
But the issue is that the left is focused on a top-down way of approach, because that's how it always was, historically speaking. It's disgruntled industrialists who turned against the capitalists by trying to tell to the workers what their interest is. And then when they were a second before gaining power, suddenly there was a vanguard party to tell the working class what their real interest is. The left works this way, and it projects. That's why they tell everyone, if you stop talking about this, people will stop.
Then you won't see the reality in front of your own eyes.
Yeah, they believe that it's the media and prominent political figures that tell people what to believe, and that people are just, a sponge that absorb other people's opinions rather than seeing things with their own eyes. Most people I know that are anti-immigration have stories where they've personally experienced the sort of negative effects of it, or know people who have, or have witnessed it with their own eyes. A lot of it is actually first-hand evidence that can't be denied.
Well, as he says here as well, these are Trumpian conditions fueled by politicians who sow fear and division. Okay, so Timmermans, if Donald Trump was president of the United States, but the Netherlands was an homogenous country, would these riots have happened? Even though less or more likely, right? It's obviously,
but it's
obviously
of
less
your own.
likely,
Yeah.
It's also that, if you don't want another Weimar, stop being a pathetically weak government.
That's also a very good point. I very much agree. But why are these riots and protests actually going on at the minute? Well, we need to go back to June of this year. And the Dutch government collapsed after Wilders quits the coalition, and it was in place for less than a year. One of the terms of the coalition was that he could not be prime minister, and so they actually got someone who was outside of government. I think he was an academic, a gentleman by the name of Dick Schoof, which is an interesting name. Doesn't travel quite well across to Britain. But it collapsed because he was pushing 10 additional asylum measures, including a freeze on applications, halting the construction of reception centres, and limiting family reunification, to just name a couple. These are pretty moderate things, really. This is only asylum seekers, and it's saying, yes, we can't have any more applications, but it's not saying every single one of you needs to go, which actually I think is probably the best way forward. But he sort of had his hands tied there, didn't he? Because that's what he was elected to do, to get these people out of the country. And if you can't do it, then there's no point being part of the government. So I understand why he quit the coalition.
And you want to disassociate yourself entirely from what are going to be the ruling party's failures.
Exactly.
And that's for a while. It's not just the last week. That's for some time now, isn't it? That he has quit?
Yeah, this was back in June, 3rd of June. And then this triggered a snap election, which is set for the 29th of October. And then, as this is talking about here, this was, I think, polling from the end of August, so just under a month ago. Still leading in the polls 2 months before the vote at the time. He's still leading now. He's still doing very well. And I think, if anything, he's going to do better and better as time goes on, because the problems that he represents the solution for are only getting worse. And although he might not be an ideal candidate because he has very strong opinions on Israel-Palestine that I think might put off some left-wingers, obviously, as well as some right-wingers. Sure. I mean, I feel like Europe has to be focusing on itself and not internationally, and I do question this diversion, but it's a price worth paying, I think, in the sense of it's better to try and save your own people and your own country first before you start caring about other countries. It's self-preservation, right? It's not exactly that radical. Another thing that I've seen going around is they've been trying to encourage Moroccans to sway the election, because normally they're quite politically inactive, and inactive in general, it seems, other than crime, which I'll be getting on to. They have, in the Netherlands, a disproportionate number of Indonesians. Anyone know why on the panel? I'm sure people in the audience might.
Empire, surely.
Yes, well done, Luca. That they're a former colony, so it sort of makes some degree of sense why they would be overrepresented. Doesn't necessarily mean they have to be there, but it makes sense why they would be. And also Moroccans, and I'm not sure for what reason that is, but they are the second largest minority, and so I think the Labour Party Green Coalition is looking for their votes. And these groups tend not to cause as many issues as some of the groups in Britain do, although particularly the Moroccans are associated with trouble. And I'm going to go quickly to this government report from 2016. This is government data, their own statistics. I'll just scroll down if I can. It's got lots and lots of stuff, but this is the most recent example I could find. In 2015, individuals with a Moroccan background were roughly 5 times as likely to have been suspected of a crime compared to the native Dutch. It is 4.64% to 0.83%. And this is, of course, probably got even worse as time goes on, because if it mirrors that of other European countries, their overrepresentation will only go up. And then for Moroccans aged between 18 to 25, 1 in 10 have been suspected of a crime. And that's just suspected. Of course, that's not prosecuted, that's not proven, but it also might suggest that more people have been committing crimes, but it just hasn't been linked to anyone. And so it could be worse, it could be better. It's difficult to tell because it's only suspects, but it's still a very alarming figure. It suggests a very real, material, measurable problem based on data. Is not people sensationalizing. It is a problem that has a tangible effect on the people that live in the Netherlands, and they are right to be angry about it. And let's have a look at some instances of problems, and they're not as severe as some European countries, but here are some Syrian children throwing water balloons at
They don't have to become as severe.
Yes, of course. There's still problems, right? But these Syrian children been invited into the country, presumably under the auspice of their safety, and they're repaying the locals by throwing water balloons that don't seem to be bursting, so they might be quite hard and painful, at young Dutch women. This sort of thing shouldn't be tolerated. It's not just children having fun, it's part of a climate of hostility. I'm not just saying this flippantly, it's pretty obvious, considering how many Syrians have behaved in Europe, involved in many killings of European peoples. And here's another one that's worth mentioning, that crime and the nature of crime is escalating in the Netherlands. No details have been released about this because it's involving a 15-year-old boy, but it is also worth mentioning that the Dutch police don't necessarily mess around either. So this is from the past weekend, the 21st of September. This 15-year-old, armed with a handgun, tried to steal an electric bike, and he was pursued. He refused to give up, and the Dutch police shot him dead, apparently in front of many children. So they take it very seriously, and of course gun crime is something that's not common in the Netherlands, really, not common in Britain either, but is increasing. And it is increasing because we have more porous borders. And it might not necessarily have been someone who migrated to the Netherlands, because we don't know the details of the person. But what we do know is that by having these routes of people illegally entering the country, as well as the legal connections that are already there, it makes it easier to ferry weapons into a country. And what we're seeing is an explosion of gun violence in Europe, where it was previously somewhat unheard of. It did happen every now and then, but it's very rare. And I think in Britain, before mass migration, we can pretty much name every single instance of there being gun violence by name. And it's etched into our consciousness because it was so rare, it was so unheard of, and it'd be in the news for weeks. And now it's just another weekend story. And this is obviously a very tragic thing. And although the police, shoot people in the Netherlands, they also do silly things like this. This is what I've dubbed the pole of colourblindness. So they're using a button on a pole that randomly decides to check people or not, to avoid ethnic profiling. And here's the thing, I think that it's good to notice patterns in crime, because once you notice the kinds of people that perpetrate crime, you're more effective at directing your limited resources to combating it. You need ethnic profiling to do a better job at policing. It might make people uncomfortable, but that's the price you have to pay if you want a safe society. Feelings shouldn't come over the safety of your own people. It's pretty obvious, right? And I think the most egregious in recent times is this, of the case of Lisa, a 17-year-old girl who was riding her bike back home from a party in Amsterdam, and she called the police to tell them that she was being followed, and then seconds later the dispatcher could hear her screaming for help as the migrants started stabbing her in the neck, seemingly for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Well, you covered that on the previous segment, didn't you? Just
I
totally
did, yeah.
unprovoked murders.
And the 22-year-old asylum seeker, so yes, they've come to seek asylum apparently, had raped another young girl 5 days earlier and was behind an attempted sexual assault on another girl 10 days earlier. These are the people you're inviting in your country. So I entirely understand why people are very angry about it and want something to be done about it. And one final thing I wanted to touch on, just to correct the record, is this. Some slop that needs correcting. It was reported that Netherlands Parliament just voted to designate Antifa as a terrorist organisation following Trump's lead, and this is actually not the case, and I hate to resort to
Oh, well, didn't stop
fact-checkers.
it getting 100,000 likes, though, did it?
I
Never
know.
mind, eh?
But the person sharing that doesn't understand that, as it explains here, the Dutch Parliament only passes a motion. It only passed as a motion requesting that the government do that, and motions in Parliament are basically talking points and do not oblige the government to do anything. And so all they said is, it would be good if you could do this, please. And if Wilders does get in again, I'm sure he'd be quite receptive to it, but it hasn't happened yet. But what is going on, and what could make this redundant, is that Hungary is urging the EU to designate Antifa as a terrorist group. And of course, well done Hungary, as usual. But because the Netherlands is a member of the EU, this would apply to them anyway. So it could be the case that if this does go through the EU Parliament, then it wouldn't need to go through the Dutch one. But with all of that out of the way, Ik steun de Nederlanders, and to the rest of you, yes, I support the Dutch people. I think they've got a very good and noble country, beautiful, everything works, very orderly, and I think that you have a right to preserve it, and I wish you all the best.
Who are the men that pick for scraps amongst the ruins at the end of history? You should know, because you encounter them every day. Between the towering buildings of a fallen empire, we find the Fellaheen, the historyless men, who know nothing of the turning of the cosmic wheel and find themselves outside of civilization itself. Cut loose from the great chain of being, they represent the loam into which our dying culture will return. That is, unless we choose to take up the burden once again. This Fellaheen condition is the subject we explore in issue 4 of Islander magazine, on sale while stocks last and available worldwide at shop.lotuseaters.com.